And tonight we're joined by Susan Consoli. Hopefully I got that correct. She's a social services coordinator with the town of Old Saybrook. Children and Youth Services, correct? Okay. And she's going to talk about social services, an overview of housing needs, programs, and some of the struggles of our residents, which we probably don't really know about too much. So Susan, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right. So town of Old Saybrook right now, currently the last stats we have are from 2023. I don't have 2024s yet. But stat reports come out every year from the Department of Social Services, broken down demographics, age ranges, programs that folks are on. So you might be surprised to know that currently there are 2,451 residents on state aid of some sort, which would be Medicaid, Husky, SNAP, food assistance. And for the elderly, there's something called MSP, which is the extra help that those folks can get when they're low income. So these are fairly low income folks. In addition to that, you know, because you know what Old Saybrook's numbers are like, right? I don't have to kind of break that down for you. The Alice report that came out this year, and again, we're waiting for this next year. The Alice report is showing that over 30% or roughly 34% of Old Saybrook residents fall into Alice, and that is the income restricted folks. So basically you're working, you get a paycheck, you barely have enough money to make bills and you're balancing things. We've all been there. And these folks don't, you know, have anywhere else to go from there. So these are all folks that are in need in Old Saybrook, and housing is a serious issue. So we have a couple of things and dynamics that have happened recently. So we all know what happened to housing prices. Beginning of COVID to now, they're like double, right? You all know what happened to your taxes, same thing, okay? So here's the problem, that trickles down into the rents and cost of rents in town. Already seeing it, I'm already dealing with just this week, one person that's being evicted, she cannot afford the rent increase of about $1,000. And I have another gentleman that works for another company within the town, so I won't mention just so I can keep that, you know, confidential, can't afford to stay living here in this town. He has 3 kids. His wife also works. Same thing happened. The house price went up, the taxes went up, and the rent went up. He cannot afford to live there anymore. So he's trying to find something in a local community, commutable enough to work, to continue his job here. He's actually thinking of going back down south where he had come from to begin with, because he just finds that it's just too difficult. And he's a good community member that does a lot of stuff for our community too. So he probably fall into that Alice category. And you know, with 3 kids, you pretty much do end up in the lower income category no matter what you do, right? Especially with food prices right now. Okay, so there are just all sorts of like constraints on people that are impacting the housing. But the biggest one was the price of housing, the taxes, and then the rent increases that are happening. So even in our affordable housing, I just talked to a woman this week also who called me quite upset in a total panic that she was already told that her rent will be going up, and it will be going up a substantial amount. She's now paying, I think around, I'm trying to remember what she's paying, about $1,200 in an affordable subsidized apartment. You know, we have those over on Ferry Road, and we have a few of those in the apartments, and I'm going to use air quotes when I say affordable apartments, okay? Because these apartments are not affordable. And so what happens is that you get into these units, so the apartments that are luxury apartments and that are affordable, those you go into at 80% median income, and then that changes. Median income goes up every year, just like everything else does. And so that changes a little bit each time. Household size does play a factor, etc. And then you pay based on that amount. But when all the units go up, you're still paying a percentage higher of everything else, right? Some of them, depending on how they were financed to begin with through the government, have some stopgap measures to them, like you can only go up so much in a year, that sort of thing. Most of them don't. We have no rent control in Old Saybrook. So people call me all the time, who do I complain to? I say, it's me. I'm sorry, there's not a lot I can do. Because we don't have any rent control here. We don't have any stop gaps where, you know, one elderly woman, she was told her rent was going up $1,500 a month. And she cannot afford to stay there. So these are the sorts of things that I'm hearing on a regular basis and have increased since the taxes came out. I had another elderly woman call me, and I'm gonna talk a lot about the elderly here, and I'll explain why also. So another elderly woman called me, and she's housebound in more ways than one. She's stuck in that house because there's nowhere else where she can go. All her family's here, all her friends are here, all her doctors are here. She doesn't want to move somewhere else. So she can't really sell the house, because if she sells the house, where's she gonna go? There's literally nowhere to go. So even if you wanted to spend a lot of money on an apartment, there isn't one. So this woman's house went up to like in the million range. Her taxes went up like $6,000. And you'd say, well, she's not really in need. But she is, because she has a limited income. So she's gonna be forced with not being able to pay her taxes, maybe getting foreclosed at some point. Who knows what's gonna happen to her? But she can't also sell the house and go somewhere, because there's nowhere to go. And some of these folks, so there's another woman that I talked to, this is all within the last probably 3 weeks. I talk to people all the time, there's quite a few, as I just, started with letting you know. Another woman that I talked to, her husband had a long ordeal with cancer. Those things have a lot of out-of-pocket costs. She did a refi on the house to be able to cover some of that. He passed away. She now would like to sell it because the taxes went up and she can't afford it. And so we crunched the numbers on it. And if she sells it, she might only clear maybe 200,000. What are you gonna do with that? There's nowhere to go. And, we even crunched it with, a conservative investment, with 4% coming in as like a, solid, right? Which can get a lot more than that now, but solid moving forward, just like break down numbers, it still didn't work. It just doesn't work. So she's kind of stuck with, now she doesn't know what she's doing either. The house is currently on the market. She is in a quandary as to what she should be doing. So this is really a problem that folks are having, and how that trickles down into our young families is that the old people can't get out of their houses. They've got 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms, or 4 bedrooms, right? How is a young family gonna move in? Because that's the house they need to move into. So we don't have housing turnover the way we should in that sense. We do have a decrease, which my numbers will show too, even a decrease in need. The increase in need is going up for the elderly. And it's going slightly down for kids, only because people just aren't having a bunch of kids anymore. And the ones that do are not moving here because they can't afford to, right? So we've got less of that. We're seeing less kids, all right? So this is something I think we need to think about in terms of how are we envisioning our community in the future? Because we are elderly top heavy in this community, like half, basically. Which is unusual for the state of Connecticut. And just a little back history on how that happened. Connecticut was basically, Connecticut shoreline here was basically the retirement housing if you lived up in the Hartford County area. So a lot of folks came down, they bought a little retirement cottage. They weren't year round at the time. And things happened with the housing market and they ended up staying. And then they ended up turning them into year round. So we do have a really large elderly population here, more so than most places. And just to give you an idea of the elderly in that figure, 623 are on state aid for very low income. That would be, needing food assistance and an extra help Medicaid, which means you're making hardly anything in Social Security. So though it's really, that number just has been increasing every year, almost by 100, which is a lot. And that's because, our demographic bill going up is more older people and people are living longer. So we can expect that. But how that translates into housing is an affordable housing. So first of all, we don't have very many affordable housing units in the first place here. And the ones that are calling themselves affordable, I'm doing this. I even do this on the phone. I tell people, you can't see this, I'm doing air quotes. It's an affordable apartment, but can you afford that? No. So that's pretty much what the kind of discussions we have. So just to give you an idea, the woman who called me in a panic, she's got 2 kids, family of 4, 2 kids, intact family. Both parents work. And because both parents work, she just got a new job, and her income will be going up approximately $4,000 or $5,000 above what it was last year. What that means is she's now going to go from the 50% median income area into that 80% median income area. Okay, so here's the decision they're forced with, and I don't want to tell people in order to stay on programs don't work. I mean, that's really not what we should be saying. But honestly, that's pretty much what it is. Cut back on some hours, all right? Because for that 4,000, her rent's going to go from approximately 1,200 to 2,500, and she can't afford it. Just to give you an idea of what that is, so that would be a median income, you know, at the 80% mark, around 80,000, a little over 80,000, for a family of 4. I mean, think about it. You know, I don't know what you guys make. You gotta, you know, pay for stuff from kids and everything. I know I'm just me. I mean, I got grandkids and other people I have to be responsible for, but you know, it's tough. It's really tough. And just to give you an idea, so just, you know, quick math, 2,500 a month, that's $30,000 a year for an affordable rent for a family. I mean, that's just outrageous. So I don't know where this goes from here. I've had people tell me that the rents, and by the way, another person already moved. She's a single mom with a child. She ended up at market rate because she got better at her job. They gave her more work. During COVID, she got telework. It's in the insurance industry, so she started making some pretty good money. And she ended up at what would then be market rate because she ended up over the 80 for a family of 2. And she was quoted, I think it was $3,000 a month. And she subsequently moved out of Old Saybrook. Again, another good community member that used to help with lots of things. So these are the sorts of issues that I'd like to make you aware of. And I'm gonna swing back around to the elderly who can't get out of the houses that maybe these people could get into. And what we've got is, so there are 36 subsidized units in East over at senior housing. I don't know if anybody talked to you about senior housing.
Yeah, where?
So we've got one senior housing.
Yeah, where? I'm
It's
sorry.
senior
Senior
housing
housing,
on Sheffield Street.
Oh,
just
okay.
down the street. There's 36 subsidized units. There's 14 in West, which are not subsidized. Those are at market. But even at market, they're not terribly high. They're around 2,000. So at the ones that are subsidized work for people that are in that very low income. And we work with a lot of those folks, because if you're on a very low amount of Social Security, how they work on the subsidized they're not by it's not by 50, 80%, everything's always changing. It's a flat 30% of your income. So it works. Whatever your income is, 30% of that's your rent, all right? That's a formula that works. You know, I did real estate for a long time. I had a mortgage company. I did all sorts of stuff in corporate America before I say I redeemed myself and back got my social work license, okay? So when we were selling houses, you know, a good formula was no more than 33% of your income should go to your housing. Because if it did, it was unsustainable. And that's what happened when we had all those foreclosures and all that stuff happened in the 90s, because I was there. And I saw what we were doing, and we actually helped create that, not me personally, but the industry. So, so going back to the units that are available. So of the 36 subsidized units that are available, the waiting list right now, I called them this afternoon to find out, is 270 people for those 36 units. And I know personally of someone who waited 9 years to be able to get in there. And I have heard it's possible that somebody waited 12. but 9 is the most that I personally know of that I can attest to. And that's just not good, right? So say you're that person who would be able to sell their, say you're that person who only can clear 200, she's on a lower social security, he died, that cuts your social security in half, now it's only hers, right? She could be a good candidate for that, but I can't send her over there because what are we gonna do? I mean, she's gonna be 90 something before she gets in there, and who even knows if she'll be here, right? So this is a serious issue. And she may have to stop the sale on her home and then figure out how else does she handle all that. So it's kind of I'm giving you a lot of the problems. I can honestly tell you I don't know the solutions, but what I do know is we need to, I think, if we want to solve this problem, my first focus would be on how do we get more elderly housing at a lower rate? Because if we do that, that frees up those houses for the young people to come in. And I think that's the only way we have a sustainable community moving forward. And I think that's the log jam that we're seeing that's going backwards and creating a problem right now. It'll create a problem for businesses and all sorts of things. So that's my 2 cents on it. And if you guys have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. You don't believe my 2 cents, but that's the way that's kind of the way I see things going. And like I said, I used to do real estate and teach it and own companies and mortgage companies and things like that. So I have a fairly good idea of how that all ends up working.
Unfortunately, I'm in real estate now, and the market's tough for people trying to buy a house.
Correct. So the average price is around 500,000 and your average, down payment then is gonna be around 100,000. How many people?
Have 100,000.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, so it's still gonna be difficult. But, there'll be CHAPA, there'll be other types of loans and
Right.
things that maybe people can get a little bit less if they're, can do VA. My kids all ended up in the military and 2 of them so far did VA loans, because it's the only way you're gonna get a house. But they're paying through the nose for how much they have to pay for that
Right,
house. I
for that
can't
house.
even believe the mortgage payments.
Right.
I mean, I wouldn't even have thought about it. I'd advise somebody never have a mortgage payment like that. But if they don't have a place to live.
Right, and depending on what size house they're looking at, a rent payment could actually be more than a mortgage payment.
Yes, correct.
So it never used to be
And
that
it's
way.
always better to buy
It
than
was
to
always,
rent. Yeah.
rent was always cheaper.
Yeah.
But now it's not.
No, and it is always better to buy. Look what happened to the housing prices if you'd have bought 4 years ago. I mean,
Right.
Housing always goes up. The average is 4 to 7% per year, so it doesn't matter if you have a big stretch of nothing happening or even if it goes down. It's like, here's the 1600, I'll go backwards. Here's the 1600s on the chart. And maybe we got some, I don't know, somebody bought some land for some corn, right? And here we are now. It's not a straight line,
No.
but it always, stock market, whole thing, it just goes up. So it's always a good investment, long-term, for a family. And it's hard to tell people what to do right now. It really is. And I'm not sure where we land here, except like I said, the only thing I could say is that if we're considering how to get more affordable houses in here, I think we need to really look at how to increase the elderly housing. Because I think that might move the needle a little bit and have the most impact, even though it seems, if we want to help a young family get in, I think that's the best way to do it. So these are some of the sort of things I'm, just trying to kind of give you an idea. There's also hundreds of people waiting for those 14 market rent ones too. I used to laugh at people and I would say, I should have put myself on the list a long time ago, but you can't get on the list until your income's lower. So until I retire, you can't get on the list. So basically,
So
I'm
there's
not
only-
up to.
There's only 50 units over there?
Yeah.
Wow.
And here's another thing, because people in town don't know this stuff that I know, because I'm doing social services, right? I'm like, I tell people some of these numbers and they say to me, that can't be right. It is right. 1 out of every 4 kids you see standing at a bus stop is on Husky medical aid. Right? That's the stats. So here's the thing, and I don't know if this is true, because people tell you things after the fact, because they're crabby about whatever happened, but it's not necessarily, you don't know if it's true or not. So I'm gonna tell you, I'm just gonna preface it by that, but it might be, sounds like something that would have happened here. When those really expensive apartments got built between the doctor's house and leading up into senior housing, there was land available. I was told by someone who should know that that land was discussed as expanding senior housing at the time, and the consensus was it was not needed. That wasn't that long ago,
No,
and it was needed. So I guess I'm happy to be here to tell you things, and I'm hoping people will actually ask questions about things moving forward in the future, because if somebody had asked me, maybe I could have convinced them, yes, we need those, you know, but no one asked. They just assume, oh, we don't need it,
yeah,
you know,
'cause
we're good here.
those were only built around 2010, 2012.
Yeah, and again, I don't know that that's a totally true
Right, no, I
statement.
understand.
Maybe the land was more I don't know, there could have been other factors,
Right.
however, it kind of sounds like stuff that I hear going on all the time, because people are constantly telling me that I can't be right about some of the numbers that I have. I've been challenged, where'd you get those numbers? So, I mean, internet, VSS, state of Connecticut.
Right.
Broken down by town, so, I don't make them up, and I do see it.
Mhm.
You know, my workload has gotten crazy. You know, I tell everybody whenever I retire, they're gonna be shocked because they're not gonna find somebody who can do the job of 5 people at once. So far, I'm getting, pretty good at it, but, it's a lot.
Right,
It's a real lot what's going on. We've got people having their electricity turned off. We all know what happened with those bills. So just a lot of stuff going on right now. Some of it was precipitated by COVID and some of the programs that were out there and that sort of thing, the movement of people geographically because they could work from home. We had a lot of New Yorkers move back into Old Saybrook. So that, there's certain things that drove up prices, but we're not unique in that sense. This is happening all over the United States. It's not just our community with the prices. It's certainly New England for sure.
we also have a number of houses that are only being used part-time,
Mhm.
which doesn't help the situation.
No. And so we have a real dichotomy here. We've got, and that's our numbers, by the way. So when we talk about what we're considering for what's median income in a community, you're looking at the really, really wealthy folks, right? It's not an average, it's a median that we're doing, okay? And then you've got the really, really lower priced folks. And you've got some folks in the middle, but hardly any anymore. You're pretty much one way or the other. And it's real difficult to get from that lower part anywhere because you can't, it's like there's nothing, you fall off a cliff. You fall off a cliff, you got a better job, you did really well. Your pay went up, your hours went up, and now your housing went up, and now this went up, and now that, it's just like, it's kind of a never-ending battle for folks. And I, for one, never believed in social services to be telling somebody, don't do that job, or don't take those extra hours. But I have to advise them that, because I can't advise them to be kicked out and where their kid's gonna be on the street.
And
So
where they're gonna get a cheaper rent.
they're not.
Right.
Well, that's the other thing, hold on to 2,500, that's still a good price right now. And that's sad, but it's true.
So just in terms of background, how is it that you are or what is your the reason that you interact with these people? I mean, do you work in an office and these people show up, or
Yeah.
is this through?
So I work
bunch of-
for the town, I'm the social services department. I have an assistant for a few hours, but I'm it. And it's an actual separate town department, but I'm over in the Youth and Family Services building. And so work with them and identify over there. But it is an actual town department. I have a separate budget and all that sort of stuff. And people, and I'm also the municipal agent for the elderly, which is an unfunded mandate. I do that for free. The federal fair housing officer, that's also for free too. But basically, So people call us all the time, you know, we're what's called human services, social services, right? So sometimes somebody will wander in here to town hall, and then they send them over to me, right? Sometimes some soup kitchen sending them over to me. Most of the people are self-referring, and also, which I'm very proud of, I've done a lot of outreach, so folks know how to find me, they know what kinds of things we could possibly do for them. I've gone over and worked at the pantry. You know, I have a food truck that comes in, Connecticut Food Share Truck, that'll be, we do that out of Grace Church, and that's coming this Friday morning. And so I'm out there a lot, you know, talking to people. I see problems. I see somebody who doesn't have a coat. I literally see somebody walking around in the wintertime with socks and no shoes, never mind boots, right?
Nice.
So then I just intervene.
Mm.
And then they'll tell somebody else, and, you know, so there's a lot of ways that I do that, but I do a lot of program work too, and get information out. We've done budgeting, counseling workshops. I have done, job fairs. We've had huge job fairs with, Workforce Alliance and American Job Center. We did successfully get 2 of our residents into EB and very good paying jobs. One
And
of
you've
them,
done this for a number of years?
yes,
Oh,
I've been doing this for, wow,
just,
kind of close, I want to say 14, maybe I think I'm coming on 14 years in this position. I do have a license in 3 different states as a psychotherapist. That's what I actually do also. I have a private practice because, like everybody else, I can't live on one income, especially not a town income. And I took a huge pay cut to go back to school and then come back and do this. And this is, you know, so this is something that, you know, I drove over the causeway one day from my house in Fenwood. I said to myself, I'm not happy. Why am I not happy? And I decided it was because I wasn't doing something I really wanted to do. And I hadn't finished doing things I wanted to do. So I drafted a letter that said I'm resigning respectfully me, and everybody said, what's wrong with you? What happened? I said, nothing happened, I'm going back to school. So I went back to school, I got this degree. I used up all of the money that I had saved from that job, which was lucrative, to pay for my schooling, so I didn't have a student loan. And I went to a top shelf school, it cost me $100,000 to get an education, my master's degree. Came out and did some interning at Youth and Family, because it's my community, so I wanted to not have to go somewhere else, and only had a few hours. And was doing counseling when the social services position became available. And I didn't even have to apply for it before they had actually offered it to me. And here I am, so I'm doing social services.
thank you for the
Yeah.
context, that's helpful.
But before that, I was corporate America, and I was at the glass ceiling of VP.
Anybody else? Bob, Kathy, anything? Bob, you're on mute.
Okay, right. I've read lots on the subject, and accepting all of the terminology, that affordable by the state definition is to not be cost burdened above 30% of your income. And that then falls into the deed restricted category of rents or some home ownership aspect that does not require more than 30% of one's income related to the median income for the town or the region. Old Saybrook has high income, so that number is high to begin with, and 30% of that is high to begin with. And so to qualify as affordable, you need to make a lot of money. Last number I heard was it was well above $28 an hour in order to afford the affordable definition. Next January, the state minimum wage is $16.35. That's easy to remember if you live in Old Saybrook with the $16.35, but it's still not going to get close to the required dollars per hour pay rate to even qualify for a deed restricted affordable dwelling unit. So it all comes down to money. If the businesses all paid everybody enough, then everybody could afford housing. But then the landlords would raise the rents. So it's a push me, pull me going on all the time. The market has created this monster. To get out of it, we have to change the market. And that means either granting subsidies or some form of government dollars to those who will build housing, hoping or demanding that some of it will be affordable. If you simply open the doors and build whatever you can possibly build to up the number of houses, the market is not going to satisfy the low end. The market, meaning the developers and the landlords, are not going to swamp the market to the point that the number of affordable, in the real affordable sense, goes up by much. The rents are still going to be too high for those who make less than $28 an hour. So the game has to be changed a lot. Zoning has on the books now regulations to allow for incentive housing zone things like Saybrook Junction. What are they called now? They're called Saybrook Junction. Originally it was Saybrook Commons, then it went to North End Main. Now it's called Saybrook Junction. 186 dwelling units, they're all apartments, on 9.3 acres of developable land because the septic system works, because they have really good soils. And so from a zoning perspective, zoning needs the information from who? Wastewater management, inland wetlands, and the sewer avoidance program history. We need to know where is the land that can accommodate increased density. The IHZ regs already today would allow single family homes at a minimum density of 6 per acre. Duplexes, they call it middle housing, would be a minimum density of 10 units per acre. And multifamily housing, like Saybrook Junction, is a minimum, that's the minimum, of 20 units per acre. And so that can happen today. Why is it not happening? A, because there's not enough lots available to put together with developable land that has soils that can handle the septic for that kind of density. So in Old Saybrook, first, find the lots with the best soils for the maximum density on those lots for housing. Then make sure that the zoning fits the density that's possible in that zoning district. Then the developer with the money has to enter the picture and build housing. And then how do we make sure that some, or maybe all, of that housing will match the state definition of affordable? That's how it all has to come together. And if something in there is broken, not enough soil capacity, then you don't get the density. You may only fit 2 or 3 houses, single families, or maybe 1 or 2 duplexes on a lot. You're not going to make hundreds of units of housing per year. And the developer who wants to maximize profits could probably make more money building a McMansion on a lot that could service 8 bedrooms than he would making 4 2-bedroom units. So the problem is money. And it's how do you move the game in a bigger picture with the money? So we have some ideas, and it all comes back to soils-based density. And without that you can't even begin to talk about incentives, unless the government is going to build the housing on town-owned land, or in some way, shape, or form that there would be some eminent domain issues involved in order for there to be more multifamily and what we would call missing middle and multiple dwelling units, even single family, on a parcel of land that can handle it. And that's how zoning looks at the picture. We have 8-30G developments in town. Lynn Street, there's one that's occupied, and there's two still under construction, and it's been years since they were approved. They're not quite finished. And then across the street from those, with the back to the shopping, the little strip mall there, where Pursuit of Pastry is, and Asian Or Block, and soon to be a Goodwill place. Anyway, those lots were also approved for 8-30G housing. And those are digestible. They look like big brick buildings to people who've lived here a long time, but it's not bad. That's pretty good stuff. The Jensen Motorhome part in Old Saybrook, way out by Westbrook, those don't count. Somehow or other, they're not affordable. But so there's opportunities to change the game and build more housing, but I don't fully trust the market forces to provide any of it to be affordable.
You shouldn't trust 830G either. Let me tell you why. Okay, because here's what the developers do. I worked with them. What they do is they come into a community and the 830G allows them to bypass a lot of zoning laws, which
Yep.
somebody says, no, we don't like that. They go, that's great. That's exactly what we wanted to hear. They get their lawyers involved. And then what happens is they get a huge subsidy from the government with some financing, maybe like those apartments, you know, whatever they're calling them now, like $1 million or $2 million. So here's the thing. I'm a developer. I have enough money. I get $1 million, you know, free. That's almost nothing to me, quite frankly. And then in order to get that, I have to agree to make a certain number of units affordable at 80%. So I build luxury condos, and now that's the ones you just talked about, those brick buildings, because I call them to find out. Those are like, you know, $3,500 a month. It's outrageous, and that's on 830G. So what's the use of 830G? All it is useful for is it's a way to get around zoning for developers to get a chunk of money. They're not going to get the 2 million or 3 million and then be forced to do the affordable housing at 50% or 30% median income, except like for Whole Partnership, right? That's a nonprofit. A for-profit developer is not going to do that. So I also think something needs to change with this 830G business, because I think it's being used by developers to get, I know it's being used by developers to get extra money for these projects and get around zoning stuff, right? And the person who's profiting again is the developer. It's not the community, and it's not the people who need the affordable apartment. So that's supposed to be there to help people, and it's really not. And also, having run a mortgage company before, if you do the math on what they're charging, it doesn't work into being affordable. It is around 50% of people's income. And so it doesn't even make any sense. And when the state figures out what's affordable, they're not figuring it out. Senior housing is, right? Because that's HUD and some other stuff that's involved. But this 830G business, whether developers just getting a chunk of money and then saying something's affordable, right, based on the enormous prices they want to charge in the first place, what's ending up happening is they're actually charging, their 830G isn't based on you can get this much money if you keep people's rents being 30% of their income. It's just based on if you can do 80% of the median income in that area. So these developers are targeting communities like ours to do this. It's a home run, you know, and transit housing was a big thing. So that's why they like that particular area. But you're right about the density and those issues. I honestly think that if we keep going down this 830G, let's get this developer to do that, this developer, it's the same thing with those brick apartments, right? That's worthless to me as far as affordable housing. It's really not. And he got some money to do that. And he probably didn't even need it.
In the case of Lynn Street, there's 19 units total in all the buildings that have been approved already by zoning. That means that at 30%, there's only 6 affordable units. That's by the state definition. They're still not truly affordable, but the state definition says they are.
Right,
That's
but
it.
if they're all at
Right,
80%.
that Saybrook Station,
Yeah.
our local IHZ, incentive housing zone regs, only require 20% of the units to be affordable. So the developer doesn't have to have 30% affordable, it's only 20 affordable, it's only 20%. And it's not for 40 years, it's only for 30 years. And so we have those carrots and nobody's jumping to do it. So it's not zoning that is the major issue to developing more dwelling units of any type. It's soil-based density for septic. That's what we, in Old Saybrook right now, and for more than 20 plus years, we rely on a referendum then that said Old Saybrook residents didn't want to build a central sewer system. And the cost has gone up lots and lots since those days. And so how do you want to spend the money? Do you want to spend maybe $100 million to build a sewage treatment plant to then entice developers to build multifamily housing in hundreds of units? That's one possible choice.
So septic system is based on how many bedrooms you have too, right? So how much usage you're gonna have in the septic systems. That's gonna bring me full circle to what I was saying, is we can build more single, one bedroom and studio elderly housing. We can get more out of that piece of land. And then we
Right.
can create extra space from those houses they're leaving. And maybe we can get 2 on that lot instead of 1, right? So I think we could change things if we look at it, the whole thing.
Right.
And
So
I don't think
yeah.
regular 2 or 3 bedroom apartments are the answer, because they're not. Those families can't afford them anyway. All we're getting is we're getting commuters from between New York and Boston. That's exactly why that it was positioned right there.
So I go along with the concept that more dwelling units in Connecticut and more dwelling units in Old Saybrook are a good thing.
Yeah.
But if we keep changing the rules until somebody bites and spends the money to build them, I don't know what it's going to take for that to happen. We've set up circumstances to encourage it. We can have residential, like apartments, over commercial on Main Street, and it's a rarity. There's an apartment above the Essex restaurant. There's one above Essence, the design, the spot, the yellow building, and there's another one on the other side of Main Street. So there's not even a handful of all of the businesses on the properties on Main Street that have residential above.
And you're
That
right,
would-
and that helps
Because
the business.
it's money.
Yeah,
The zoning is not the problem in as much as money is the problem.
I'm still gonna say it's part of the problem though, because think about what happened in the early 60s and the 50s, right? Huge developments went up of capes with 2 bedrooms, and then you could, finish the top part later. And ranches, same thing. I grew up in a neighborhood like that. My dad was able to afford it, the teacher. And so there's nothing like that being built anymore. I myself would love a little 2-bedroom ranch where I could have a cat and a dog, have a tiny little yard, and not have to worry about stairs as I get older, but it doesn't exist, right? There's nothing I can buy like that. Nobody builds that stuff anymore.
It's not profitable.
Yeah.
It goes back to the money part.
Yeah.
They're not making enough money on it, that's why.
Well, and all that housing got built because there was a government subsidy back then.
Yeah.
Because we had a lot of, vets coming out and we needed housing. But
So-
what happened at that time, you had a baby boom too, right? So what's happening now is the exact opposite. We've got people only having 1 child or no children.
So if you look around the state of Connecticut and ask yourself what is being built with density in the multifamily housing situation, that's the only one that I have some pictures for, but there's a company called Vessel that has built or is about to finish at construction on Howard Street in New London. They also have had approvals with some zoning resistance in Glastonbury and Simsbury. And so Old Saybrook should get pictures of the actual physical sites where multifamily housing is being built because the developer believes they can make the money. Will that work in Old Saybrook? That's a maybe. We have to look into that. There was a development proposed in the Plantsville section of, I think it's Southington, by a company that has the name Lovely. And I think they finally got approval for what they proposed to build. And that was supposed to be more like missing middle housing, not multifamily. To me, multifamily is when you open the door to your living space, you're in a hall inside the building. If it's not multifamily, when you open the door from your living space, you step into the outdoors and there is sky. And so to me, multifamily is that kind of housing, and anything else has a door to the outdoors from where you live, the space where you live. So I think there's a couple of examples of what is being built where developers think they can make money in Connecticut. So I will do what I can to find more pictures of those things that are being built. And then we can assess whether or not that density could be accommodated in Old Saybrook. And perhaps even if that style could be accommodated, could be not accommodate, that's a wrong word. That style would be embraced in Old Saybrook. There are some styles which are more appealing than others. We'll leave it at that. And we'll see. I'll see where that leads, if I can get pictures of what's out there.
That'd be good. All right. Anybody else have any other questions or any comments for Susan?
Sorry about my attack on 8:30.
No, that's fine.
It's just not working.
I think we all have a love-hate relationship with 8:30G, so I don't think it's a bad thing having an attack on it. Anyone else have any other comments or anything? All right. Well, thank you, Susan. That was enlightening. I knew parts of it, didn't know the whole story, so.
Yeah, and if you guys ever have any other questions for me, I mean, I have business cards I can give you if you want, but I'm the town office, so I'm not hard to find. You just call me and I'd be
Great.
happy to answer anything else if you have something comes up.
Well, thank you.
All right,
Yes,
you all set with me?
I am.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
And that ends the Housing Task Force part of tonight.